Verse 8, he said, henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of life, or a crown of righteousness, which the righteous judge shall give. See, the righteousness of God is honesty. The righteousness of God is true judgment. The righteousness of God is forgiveness. Now, when I talk about honesty and true judgment, that's something we don't have. And I'm not saying all of us are liars. I'm not saying all of us are not honest, but we have some dishonesty inside of us. We may not always tell the whole truth, but we may keep a little of the truth back. That's not the case with God. God is an honest God. I like that about God, that when God says something, he's fair and he's honest. He's not a liar. James said that every good gift and every perfect gift coming from the Father which is above, in whom there's no variableness, neither shadows of turning. See, I can promise you something and take it back. Even if I give it to you, Sister Mitchell, in my mind, I took it back. I gave it to you because I said I was going to give it to you, but I changed my mind after I said I was going to give it to you, and I really didn't want to give it to you, but I gave it to you because I said, but in my heart, I took it back. I'm not honest. God is not like that. God is an honest God. God is a fair God. If I go to hell, Brother Drumgool, you didn't send me there. If I go to hell, Edgar, you didn't do anything to cause me. You can slap me. You can push me down. You can talk about my mother. I get up and curse and say all kind of horrible things about you and have a heart attack and die. I cannot stand in the judgment and say, God, if Edgar had not said all of them things and done that to me, and then when he said something about my mama, now you know, God, you don't talk about my mama. When I go to hell, it won't have anything to do with him. Because God is a fair God. God is an honest God. Paul in Romans chapter 12, Paul talks about that there's no respect of person with God. God doesn't, now this is going to be hard for us to fathom, Brother Ralph. God doesn't treat me different than he treats you. Now, all of us get some rain and some sunshine. All of us receive some things from God. But there's some of us that get some extra stuff from the Lord because we're doing what God says. So when I ask God at 3 o'clock in the morning, will you guide me through this night? Will you ease my stomach? Will you forgive me? If I ask God and I'm right in the eyesight of God, he will hear me because he said he'll hear me. But he'll do the same for you too, if you fall in line with God. So if God don't hear your prayer, it's not because God prefers you over me. It's not because God thinks I'm better than you and you're less than me. It's because God is just honest and fair in his judgment. So when we talk about the judgment of God, when we talk about the righteousness of God, we're talking about a perfect, holy, and just being. God is perfectly holy and he's perfectly just. There's no flaw whatsoever in God. There's no room for improvement. One thing that bothers me sometimes with some of our preachers, we try to be so smart and we try to find something or come up with something that God doesn't or God can't. Well, and even Brother Lord talked about how that salvation comes by the word of God and by being obedient to God. If we don't be obedient, God can't save us. Well, that's what God said. So I don't have to come up with things that God can and cannot do to prove that he's a just God. His word take care of that. In John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. In verse 17, he said God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Verse 18, he that believeth in him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already. I don't have to tell you, you're going to hell for not being a member of the Lord's church. God has already said that. And guess what? I don't have to apologize when I tell you what God says. Because God is just. And God is holy. And that's what this righteousness of God means. In Jeremiah chapter 23. And if you look at verse 1 through verse 5,